Today we're here in the home of Joyce and Don Steinours, who have been at the lake many, many years, although they didn't officially live there. Don was maintenance manager there for over 32 years, so we're anxious to hear all his stories of what's happening at Lake Heritage during that time.
Go.
Well, Don and Joyce, it's been real great knowing you over the years, and I just wonder, your background, Gettysburg, Steinours, how long have you been residents, and kind of what your heritage came from to get you into the Gettysburg area, and hence following on with Lake Heritage.
You want me to answer that?
Sure.
My grandfather lived on Breckenridge Street in Gettysburg, and Dad had, I think it was 3 or 4 brothers, I'm not sure anymore. It's been so long.
There's a lot of Steinours.
And he lived to be 90-something.
Wow.
But when my parents bought this farm back in, I don't even remember the year, but we've been living here ever since. At least I have. Of course, Dad's been gone for 62 years.
And you found your bride?
Yeah, I found her at the restaurant.
You always did like to eat, Don.
It's the Pike now. It was Banker's.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay, I
worked
remember
there.
Banker's.
Yeah, I worked. My aunt was a cook
Yeah,
there.
we've been
Really?
here. I bought the place in '61 from 4 of my brothers, and paid it off in '71. I only had a 10-year mortgage, and our mortgage bill was only like 42 or 43 bucks a month.
Tough, tough.
And I tell you, it was a struggle to make them too.
Yeah, I'm sure it was, but how much acreage have you got?
Well, the farm had 42 point some purchase, and the highway 15 taken off 3 point some acres. That was before I bought it.
So, I know you were manager or maintenance manager at Lake Heritage. How did you come to get that job, and how many years did you have it?
Well, a good friend of mine, Press Rudisil, told me that Al, what was his last name?
Which one?
Fleckinger?
Flickinger.
Was retiring or quitting, I don't know which. He said, why don't you go down and apply for the job? And at the time I was working for Buck's Dairy out of Hanover. And I said, okay, I will go down. So they had a meeting at Mr. Licklider's house, the board did, so I went there. And they hired me because they needed somebody bad, I guess.
For better.
I know that you own a lot in Lake Heritage, 151. Did you own that lot before you became manager, or did you decide to buy it after you've been working in the lake there a while?
I bought it after I was there. I don't know what year it was anymore, but the guy that owned it was from Ironsville, and he said he didn't no longer want it. He was giving it back to the association. I said, what do you mean you're giving it back? He said, I don't want it. I'm giving it back. I'm tired of paying dues. I don't use nothing. I said, well, you're going to give it back. I'll give you $500 for it. He said, it's yours.
Cut.
Go.
Let me just think a second. Okay. Don, there's a lot of things that happen at the lake that people never hear about. And I know you were involved in a lot of them. Like putting in the boat ramp back in '84, I think it was. You built that whole boat ramp there at lot 222. And lots of things happen around the lake that you created, yet people don't realize the amount of things you did for the community back in those days. And recalling some of the things that happened. I was told the other day a story about an individual that was killed in an automobile accident there at the lake I'd never heard of. And I understand it was at one of the bridges, and it was a postman or something to that effect. Can you fill us in on that a little?
Yeah, there was a postmaster in Gettysburg. It was at the foot of the spillway. It was in the wintertime, and there was a car stuck on the hill, nobody in it. He, as a good Samaritan, gets out, walks up to it, opens the door, and the car started drifting away, and he couldn't get away from the door, and he went down the hill and right into the water, because it was deep in there then, and got drowned right there.
Go.
You talked about he went into the water down at the spill there. Now I know you added an addition or platform or something down at the bottom of the spillway sometime when you were there. I read about it somewhere in a newsletter. Do you recall? I think a retaining wall maybe you built on the spillway.
Yeah, that was up at the top on,
Oh, it was the
on
top,
the spill,
okay.
on the dam itself. We've had to put little, just small retaining walls in case of a flood would ever flow over, to keep it from washing out behind the main walls, I guess it was.
Okay.
They were only about a foot wide and maybe 6 feet long, give or take.
Okay.
Okay, Don, you were a one-man crew to start with, I assume, and then
was.
eventually, after a couple of years, the lake grew, more population, and you probably hired a person or two, and hence your span of what you did, expanded greatly. Can you tell me some of the experiences you had with your crew coming up with different things that had to be done?
Well, back then, we built a lot of seawalls, retaining walls, or whatever you want to call them, on the wreck areas. But we built them mostly out of railroad ties. And we had to go to Harrisburg to get them. And they were in gondola cars. And that was in '79, and that's when I screwed my back up. And I was in pain, I mean bad pain. But anyhow, I kept telling them, I said, let's build permanent walls. I said, someday you're gonna have to tear these out. Yeah, but them railroad ties are free. I said, yeah, but they ain't gonna be free when you have to tear them out and get rid of them. So we did build a few retaining walls out of concrete. We had to rent the forms off of Joe Miller, and he charged by the square foot. But then he wanted to help just set the forms and pour the forms. But we got the footers put in and the rods put in ourselves.
Okay.
You mentioned the recreation areas and building these retaining walls. What did you have anything to do with building? I see so many brick fireplaces and swing sets that are quite old and things like that.
They were all there when American Realty developed the place. They put them fireplaces in. There's still some down here on Jackson Drive.
Right, we
in that
saw
rec
that.
area. But most of them are all torn out. No, very few people ever used them.
Was the pool in? Did you have anything to do with
No,
that? Was
pool
that American
in.
Realty?
Yeah, that was all in. And they had a baby pool there, what they called it. But then they replaced the baby pool over the years.
Did they not do or remodel that whole pool sometime while you were there? Were you a part of that?
Well, they put a new cap on it, I think it was, while I was there.
And how about the new clubhouse? Were you a part of that?
No, not the new club. Well, the new club.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the pool. Yeah, I was there. I was there when they had the old clubhouse. And then when they built the new one, yes, I was there.
Good. Did you work on it or was that
No,
outsourced?
that was all. Glenn Simpson built.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a contractor that done it.
Don, there's lots of stories about, the lake sits on 3 different townships, with the middle of the lake being a joining point of the townships. And,
Yep.
it's just kind of funny as to how they chose this place to put the lake. And, do you recall, the genesis of what the properties were there and what the lake was like before it became a lake and was just a little run?
It was just a small stream. Of course, it got flooded at times in heavy rains, which it still does. But we used to hunt through all them farms down there when we were kids. Of course, when American Realty developed it, that cut us off. But
How many farms were there, do you
there
recall?
were six,
Uh-huh.
actually 6 different farmhouses on the property.
Uh-huh. Do we still have any left?
Yep, we got 3, I think.
3 of them.
Yeah, 3.
Don, I understand through Scuttlebutt and so forth that there's a bridge somewhere underneath our lake. And I also understand that there's pipes, some we use and some we don't. Can you tell me about, is there a bridge and is there a usable or an unusable pipe underneath there?
Yes, there's a bridge down there. It's a concrete bridge. It's in the old road that went right down the lake, straight through the middle of the lake, right on down to 97. And it's still there. It's like 52 feet deep there at that point.
Wow.
There's a pipe in the breast of the dam that runs parallel with it, I guess you'd call it. And we had a leak a couple times over the years. And I didn't realize it till they told me there was a pipe in there. Why they put it in, I don't know, something to do with whatever.
Wow.
But I never did find out what. But there's standpipes on the breast themselves that they used to monitor. I don't know if they still do or not. They probably do. They had an outfit come in and done that.
Don, you said you went all the way to Ohio to get a crank or something for
Get
the
a valve.
a valve.
Yeah,
Can you
it was a gas valve.
explain what that works?
12-inch valve, I think it was.
And what does that work?
It's got a big wheel on it. You ought to turn it, man, and I mean, it's tough.
And that's what opens
Yeah.
our flow of water
And
out of
there's
the...
one back in a pit that you can't see. There's another one in there. And I used to have to open that thing. I used to take a piece of pipe and stick in it somehow and get my feet up against the wall, and I'd pry like hell to get it open. But
Is there an easier way now today, or?
well, we left it open. We didn't close that one. We
Okay.
only closed the one that we had.
It only takes manpower.
It only takes
Lots.
Lots. Okay.
It was.
So Joyce, you've been married to this man that's been so involved in Lake Heritage all these years. As someone standing back and watching everything he's doing, what are some of the things that stick in your mind that have happened or that Don's been involved with during the years at Lake Heritage?
Well, I can remember one year we had that big snow that he had to walk to work from here.
Wow.
He walked down through the field. You couldn't even hardly see him. It was snowing and blowing and drifting. And was that year you were down there for 5 days? You didn't come home for 5 days
Wow.
trying to keep the roads open?
And were you able to keep the roads open?
Did anyone
Only
get them open? You had
Heritage
to
Drive.
start all over again.
One lane on Heritage Drive.
I remember one time I was
I can
with
tell you a
you
story about him.
and
too.
the dump truck went off the road into the ditch, the old blue dump.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that one? It
So
was
were
up on
you,
Grant or somewhere, wasn't
were
it?
you a one-man snowplower? There was
No,
nobody?
Well,
we had Brad.
Brad was there when he would come in. Sometimes
Yeah.
he wouldn't even bother
Well, if he
coming in
couldn't
when I
make it.
call him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He always had some kind of excuse he couldn't make it. But
Oh, ready? I understand that at the maintenance shed, there's something very special for you people there. Can you explain that for us?
you want to explain a moment?
There's a memorial there for my daughter.
And that came about,
She died of cancer at the age of 38.
and what was her name?
Sharon.
Ah, God bless.
Cool.
Okay, Don, 32 years as maintenance man there in Lake Heritage. Any regrets of having that position all those years?
Well, it's not always been whatever
Fun.
you want to call it fun, because they only pay me for 40 hours, and I put in a lot more than 40 hours over a week's time. Plowed snow all night already, never got paid for it. They said we have comp time. And after so many years, they said we're doing away with comp time, but I never got any of my comp time, so I didn't. So I was pretty well pissed about that. I almost called Harrisburg, but I thought it's better just leave it alone. But
Well, Don, basically when you started, I think you were called lake manager, and then you moved kind of into the maintenance. Did you have any other jobs that you got involved in around the lake that had to do with the maintenance and upkeep of everything that was going on there?
well, like I say, when I first started there, I ran security plus maintenance. And we got called out many and many a night for people putting up tents or this and that they weren't allowed to do. And lots of things went on. So, yeah.
Did you have a lot of Don, when you first started, did you have a lot of volunteers, or were you able to build a volunteer force to help you out over the years?
Yes, we had a lot of people volunteer. Some of them only lasted one time, but especially when we went to get them railroad ties. Bill Scott, he had a property down there. He owns the property right across the street from me here, but he doesn't live there. He worked one time with them railroad ties. He said, never again.
Then you had